At 2:17 a.m. on September 23, 1944, Staff Sergeant James Thompson perched in the commander's hatch of his M4 Sherman tank, clutching a device that defied all military protocol. It was a ragtag contraption, a shaving mirror glued to cardboard, a magnetized sewing needle balanced atop a pencil eraser, held together with string and tape. His hands trembled not from the chill of the Belgian night, but from the weight of responsibility. 12 tanks and 63 men were about to stake their lives on this homemade gadget. 20 minutes earlier, the unit's official lensatic compass had failed. So had every other compass in the column. They were deep in the Hurken forest, eastern Belgium, German-held territory. The trees wove a canopy so dense that moonlight couldn't pierce it. No stars, no landmarks, just inky darkness and the low growl of diesel engines, a sound that could draw enemy patrols from miles away. Behind Thompson, 11 more Shermans idled on a logging road that ended abruptly at a bombed-out bridge. They were part of the 4th Armored Division, detached 3 hours earlier for a reconnaissance mission that had gone catastrophically wrong. Captain Morrison had ordered radio silence the moment they crossed into German territory, a wise call. German direction finders could lock onto a radio transmission in under 2 minutes, but it also meant no reinforcements were coming. The original plan had been straightforward: punch through a gap in German defenses, scout enemy positions near Aachen, and return before dawn. The gap existed, but the intelligence on German strength was fatally flawed. They'd driven straight into the rear echelon of the 5th Panzer Army. Thompson had watched through his periscope as German supply trucks rumbled past just 50 yards away with headlights on, completely oblivious to the 12 American tanks hidden in the tree line. Morrison's voice crackled over the intercom, 15 words that upended everything. "The bridge is gone. All compasses are dead. We need another way out now." Thompson glanced back at his homemade compass. The needle quivered, pointing in a direction that felt off, north, maybe northeast. It was hard to tell with adrenaline narrowing his vision and his hands still shaking. He'd built the thing 2 weeks earlier as a joke, a sewing needle from his repair kit, magnetized by rubbing it 50 times against a magnet salvaged from a broken radio. At first, he'd floated it in a tin cup of water, but it spilled every time the tank moved, so he'd switched to balancing it on a pencil eraser. The mirror was for checking the needle's angle without bending down. Crude, childish, something a kid might make for a science fair. His crew had laughed when they saw it. Even Morrison had cracked a smile. But Thompson had kept it taped inside his map case anyway, lighter than the clunky official compass, handy for quick checks. Now that official compass spun uselessly, some kind of magnetic anomaly in the forest was to blame. Maybe iron ore deposits in the rocks, or leftover shrapnel from artillery strikes. The why didn't matter. What mattered was that dawn was just 3 hours and 40 minutes away. When the sun rose, German patrols would spot them instantly. 12 Shermans stood no chance against the entire 5th Panzer Army. They had to move. But where? Thompson did the math. A wrong turn would drive them deeper into enemy territory, where fuel would run out and they'd be surrounded, captured, or killed. Staying put would lead to the same end, just slower. The only option was to trust the compass, made from trash. Morrison climbed onto Thompson's tank, his face ashen in the dark. He studied the homemade device, his expression unchanging. "How sure are you?" Thompson wanted to lie, to sound confident, but Morrison had pulled him from a burning half-track near St. Lo, had told him the truth when his brother died at Omaha Beach. He deserved honesty. 60%, Thompson said. Morrison was silent for 5 seconds, then nodded. "That's better odds than staying here. Lead the way." What happened next wasn't in any training manual. But before we dive deeper, if you're hooked by this untold WWII story, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us share more forgotten histories like this one. Now let's get back to Thompson's desperate mission. Tank navigation troubles in World War II were nothing new. They'd been killing men since 1942. American tank commanders received a mere 4 hours of compass training before deployment. Read the dial, find north, follow the heading. Simple in theory, deadly in practice. A standard M4 Sherman carried 3 navigation tools: the primary lensatic compass at the commander's station, a backup in the driver's compartment, and paper maps. But those maps showed roads, rivers, and elevation lines, rarely the critical combat details, like which forests had magnetic anomalies or which valleys filled with impenetrable fog. Night operations were supposed to be rare. Fort Knox doctrine emphasized daylight advances with infantry support and air cover. By September 1944, though, doctrine had crashed into reality. The German army was retreating but fighting fiercely, moving at night to avoid Allied aircraft. So American commanders began sending tanks out after dark, recon missions, supply column raids, quick strikes that required speeding through unknown territory without lights. The results were disastrous. Between June and September 1944, the 4th Armored Division lost 23 tanks to night navigation errors. Not combat losses, but navigation losses. Tanks drove into rivers because drivers couldn't see the banks. Others got separated from their columns and wandered into German positions. Some ran out of fuel trying to find their way back to friendly lines. The worst incident came on August 19th. A platoon of 5 Shermans was sent to scout near Chartres, France, leaving at 10 p.m. By midnight, they were lost. The lead tank's compass had failed. The others followed anyway, figuring staying together was safer than splitting up. They drove in circles for 3 hours, burning fuel and making noise. At 3:15 a.m., they stumbled into a German supply depot, where 40 Wehrmacht soldiers armed with Panzerfausts waited. All 5 tanks were destroyed. 19 crewmen died. 2 were captured. After that, Division Command issued new orders. All-night operations required backup navigation, star charts, terrain recognition, radio check-ins every 30 minutes. But these solutions had flaws. Star charts were useless under cloud cover. Terrain recognition needed visible landmarks, impossible in total darkness. Radio check-ins broadcast their position to German listening posts. The Hürken Forest compass problem was worse. The forest sat atop iron ore deposits, disturbed by years of artillery bombardment. Unexploded shells, scattered shrapnel, and rusting tank wrecks from earlier battles created magnetic interference that made compasses spin like tops. The Germans knew about the anomaly. They'd operated here since 1943, navigating by landmarks and dead reckoning. American units were new to the area, with no training for magnetic dead zones or simultaneous compass failures. Thompson's column had driven into the anomaly at 11:47 p.m. At first, compasses just wobbled, needles 10 to 15 degrees off true north, annoying but manageable. But the deeper they went, the wilder the needles spun. Full clockwise and counterclockwise rotations, no pattern. By midnight, every compass was useless. Morrison had tried everything, sending his driver to check landmarks, futile in total darkness. Dead reckoning, impossible after too many turns avoiding obstacles. Even waiting for dawn, suicidal with German patrols imminent. That's when Thompson had pulled out his toy compass, the one made of mirror, needle, and hope. By 2:34 a.m., the situation had grown more dire. The crew's morale was fracturing. Private Webb, the driver, had been breathing diesel fumes for 43 minutes, watching his fuel gauge drop, his voice edge with panic over the intercom. Corporal Diaz, the gunner, fidgeted in his seat, clicking the turret traverse nervously. Elsewhere in the column, a crewman in Lieutenant Parker's tank was hyperventilating. Fuel was running low. Temperatures had dropped to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 degrees Celsius, making diesel thicken and engines run rough. Thompson's hands were numb from clutching the compass for so long. Morrison climbed back onto Thompson's tank, map in hand and flashlight with a red filter, dim enough to stay invisible beyond 50 yards, he hoped. He spread the map on the turret, pointing to their last known position, a pencil mark on a road that no longer existed. "If your compass is accurate," Morrison said, "and if we're actually here, and if there's a logging road heading northwest 2 miles from here, we might have a way out." 3 ifs, 3 assumptions stacking the odds against them. Any mistake would drive them into enemy lines, off a cliff, or into an uncrossable river. Then at 2:37 a.m., they heard it. Diesel engines, not American. Higher pitched, a tighter mechanical rhythm. German trucks or half-tracks to the east. Maybe a mile away, maybe closer. Sound traveled strangely in dense woods. Morrison signaled for silence. The idling Sherman engines suddenly seemed deafening. Thompson held his breath as the German vehicles moved parallel to their position. For now, not toward them, but time was running out. Morrison's face said it all. They were out of time. They moved now, or they didn't move at all. Thompson checked the compass again. The needle was steady, pointing northwest. His gut screamed west, the shortest route back to American lines. But he chose the needle. Morrison signaled the other tank commanders. Column formation, Thompson's Sherman in the lead, others following 20 yards apart. No lights, no radio. Stop when Thompson stopped. Turn when he turned. At 2:41 a.m., Thompson keyed the intercom. "Webb, we're moving, northwest heading. Stay 15 yards behind. Follow my hand signals." Webb's voice was thin. "How do you know it's northwest?" "Because the compass says so." A pause, then Webb's reply. Words that would haunt Thompson for life. "Sarge, if we die because of that thing, I'm going to haunt you." Thompson almost laughed, but there was no time for humor. "Get ready to move." The Sherman lurched forward, treads digging into soft forest soil. Thompson stood in the hatch, compass in one hand, flashlight in the other. He rarely used the light. Even with the red filter, it felt like shouting their position to every German in the woods. The first 30 yards were easy, but then the terrain rose, forcing adjustments. 5 degrees left to avoid a fallen tree, 10 degrees right to steer clear of an artillery crater. Each turn made his heart race. Every deviation shrank their margin for error. Behind him, 11 Shermans followed in the dark. Thompson couldn't see them, only hear their engines and the crunch of treads over branches. He thought of Morrison in the second tank, trusting his silhouette. Of the other crews, men he'd fought beside since Normandy, all placing their lives in a compass that shouldn't work. At 2:53 a.m., they hit their first obstacle, a 15-foot wide stream, unmarked on the map. Webb stopped the tank. Thompson climbed down, tested the depth with a stick, 3 feet shallow enough, and signaled to cross. The Sherman splashed into the water, engine straining for grip. For 5 seconds, Thompson feared they'd get stuck, but then it surged up the far bank. One by one, the other 11 tanks crossed safely. Relief didn't come, though. They'd only been moving 12 minutes, with miles to go. What no one knew yet was why Thompson's homemade compass worked when the official ones failed. It came down to 3 things: weight, materials, and a happy accident of design no Fort Knox engineer had considered. Military lensatic compasses weighed 11 ounces, with brass housings, steel bezels, and iron mounting brackets. Precision tools, but all that metal amplified magnetic interference, turning small distortions into wild needle spins. Thompson's compass had almost no metal, just a thin, light sewing needle, less than 1/10 of an ounce, and non-metallic parts: cardboard, glass, rubber, string. No metal meant no amplification. The needle could still sense Earth's magnetic field, even amid the anomaly. Friction was another advantage. Military compasses used jeweled bearings for smooth rotation, but in the Hyrcan forest, that low friction was a curse. Interference made the needle spin uncontrollably. Thompson's needle sat on a pencil eraser. The rubber's friction slowed it down, damping wild movements. The needle wobbled, but it didn't spin uselessly. It found north, slowly but surely. Finally, magnetization. Thompson had magnetized the needle by rubbing it against a radio magnet 50 times, a childhood trick. The magnetization was weak, far weaker than a factory compass, but that weakness helped. A strongly magnetized needle would react violently to interference. A weak one reacted gently, just enough to find north without being overwhelmed. The mirror, meanwhile, let Thompson check the needle's reflection without taking his eyes off the terrain, a small detail that saved crucial seconds. Thompson checked the compass every 2 minutes. The needle stayed steady, pointing northwest. They crossed 3 more streams, skirted moonlit clearings, and halted once for 10 minutes while a German patrol passed within 100 yards. Too close for comfort, but the enemy never noticed them. At 3:21 a.m., Webb's voice came over the intercom. "Sarge, fuel gauge is at half. How much farther?" Thompson didn't know. The map showed friendly lines 8 miles away, but they'd covered only 3 miles at most, burning fuel fast from detours and slow navigation. He just said, "Keep going." Then at 3:28 a.m., the needle wavered. For 47 minutes, it had been steady, but now it oscillated 5 degrees left and right. Thompson's stomach dropped. He tapped the compass, held it still, but the wavering continued. Morrison radioed, "Thompson, why are we stopping? Compass is acting strange. Give me 2 minutes." 2 minutes felt like 20. Thompson pulled out the map, tried to calculate their position, but too many turns made it impossible. At 3:31 a.m., the needle stopped wavering, now pointing north, not northwest. Thompson had no idea why. Maybe they'd entered a worse anomaly. Maybe they'd left it. Maybe the compass was failing. Morrison climbed onto the tank. "What's happening?" "I don't know. The heading changed. Could mean we're out of the anomaly, or in a worse one. Could mean this thing is breaking." Morrison studied the terrain. The forest was thinning, moonlight dappling the ground. He pointed to a ridge 300 yards north. "If we climb that, we can see farther. Spot landmarks, figure out where we are." It was a gamble. Ridges were exposed, but staying put was riskier. Thompson signaled the column to move. The climb took 11 minutes. The slope was gentle but loose, forcing Shermans to gun their engines. Noise discipline went out the window, but no German fire came. At 3:46 a.m., they reached the ridge. Thompson climbed out of the hatch, looked northwest, and gasped. Dozens of lights. A German encampment 2 miles away, tents, vehicles, campfires, the entire 5th Panzer Army staging area, spread like a small city in the valley. If they'd kept going northwest, they would have driven straight into it. Morrison saw it too, face pale in the moonlight. "The compass saved us." "No," Thompson said. "The compass broke, and that saved us. If it had stayed accurate, we'd be dead." It was dumb luck, the kind that made men question fate. Using the German encampment as a reference, Morrison reoriented their route. Northeast to a road junction, east along a supply road, intelligence said it was clear, then south to American positions near Aiken, 6 miles away. Fuel was half gone, it would be tight. "Can that compass give us northeast?" Morrison asked. Thompson checked. The needle pointed north, steady. He could estimate northeast by splitting the difference between north and east. "Yeah, I can do northeast." They moved out at 3:53 a.m., descending the ridge away from the German camp. Thompson watched the compass constantly, adjusting the column 10 degrees right to estimate northeast. At 4:07 a.m., they hit the road junction, exactly where the map said it would be. Relief washed over Thompson, but it was short-lived. Then came the sound every tank commander feared. Tank tracks on hard road, metal on gravel, the distinct clank of German panzers, coming from the east along the supply road they needed to take. Morrison signaled stop. The 12 Shermans froze. Thompson counted 3 distinct engine notes. 3 German tanks, likely Panthers or Tigers. A meeting engagement at point-blank range would be suicidal. Morrison decided in 10 seconds. "We wait, let them pass, then we cross." At 4:12 a.m., the German tanks reached the junction. 3 Panthers, massive with sloped armor and long 75mm guns that could punch through a Sherman's front plate at 1,000 yards. They moved fast, 40 kilometers per hour, headlights on, confident in their controlled territory. The lead Panther passed 200 yards from Thompson's tank. He could see the commander in the hatch, scanning the road with binoculars, never looking left or right. One sound, one mistake, and they'd be dead. The Panthers passed. Morrison waited 2 minutes, then signaled to move. At 4:17 a.m., Thompson's Sherman rolled onto the supply road. Webb pushed the tank to 20 kilometers per hour, faster than they'd moved all night. They traveled east for 12 minutes, then turned left at a fork. The map showed the right fork led to a German depot. The road climbed a gradual slope. The Sherman's engine labored, fuel gauge below a quarter. Dawn approached, east sky turning from black to gray. Morrison radioed, "Increase speed. We need to reach American lines before full daylight." Webb pushed the throttle to 30 kilometers per hour, dangerous on an unfamiliar road, but speed was their only defense. At 4:43 a.m., Thompson saw a roadblock ahead. Logs, barbed wire, sandbag positions. He couldn't tell if it was American or German. Morrison's voice came over the radio, one word heavier than any order. Pray. It was American. Third Army positions outside Aachen, unmanned because the unit had pulled back to avoid German artillery. At 4:47 a.m. on September 23, 1944, Thompson's column rolled through the roadblock. 12 Shermans, 63 men, 0 casualties. They reached an American supply depot at 5:03 a.m., 17 minutes before sunrise. Fuel gauges read empty. Webb shut down the engine, and it wouldn't restart. They'd burned every drop getting home. Morrison filed his after-action report that afternoon, mentioning the compass failure, Thompson's improvised device, the near miss with the German encampment, and the Panther Patrol. 4th Armored Division Command read it, filed it, and did nothing. No new orders on backup navigation, no suggestion that crews carry homemade compasses. Official word, Thompson had gotten lucky. Magnetic anomalies in the Hürtgen forest were known. Proper planning and daylight operations would prevent repeats. Thompson kept his compass, taped back in his map case. He never needed it again. The 4th Armored Division pushed east into Germany, where standard compasses worked. The device became a curiosity, mentioned in crew letters home, but never used in combat. The Hürtgen Forest battle continued until December 1944, with American casualties exceeding 33,000. Hundreds died or were wounded after getting lost in the forest, but their deaths were blamed on terrain and visibility, not compass failure. Navigation got one paragraph in a 50-page lessons learned report. Thompson survived the war, promoted to technical sergeant in November 1944, awarded a Bronze Star for the mission. The citation vague, mentioning initiative and leadership under difficult conditions, with classified details. After the war, he returned to Pennsylvania, worked as a machinist, married, had 3 children, and rarely spoke of the war. The compass stayed in a garage box with his medals and photos. Thompson died in 1993 at 71. His children donated his war memorabilia to the Patton Museum at Fort Knox, Kentucky. Today, the compass sits in display case 47, navigation equipment section, cardboard, mirror, magnetized needle on a pencil eraser, string. The placard says Thompson used it to navigate 12 tanks through enemy territory when standard compasses failed, but it doesn't mention the compass gave the wrong heading initially, or that its failure and dumb luck saved them, or that Thompson spent his life wondering if 60% confidence justified risking 62 lives. Modern military GPS makes compass navigation nearly obsolete. Tank commanders can pinpoint their position within 10 meters anywhere on Earth, but GPS can be jammed, disrupted, or fail. When it does, soldiers still need to know north. The Army teaches basic compass navigation at Fort Benning, lensic compasses, magnetic declination, terrain association, dead reckoning, but not about Thompson's improvised compass. Not about how crude solutions sometimes beat sophisticated ones, or how survival depends less on the right equipment than on creativity to improvise when everything goes wrong. Thompson's compass sits in its case, a reminder. Wars are won not just by superior technology or training, but by ordinary soldiers making desperate decisions in impossible situations, sometimes lucky enough to live and tell the story. 12 tanks, 63 men, 4 hours in enemy territory, 1 homemade compass, 0 casualties. A mission no training manual could prepare them for. If you found this story as compelling as we did, take a moment to like this video. It helps us share more forgotten WWII stories. Subscribe to stay connected with these untold histories. Each one matters, each deserves to be remembered. And we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Our community spans from Texas to Tasmania, veterans to history enthusiasts. You're part of something special here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for keeping these stories alive.